Terra Nova is weaving together a vibrant network of world builders, soul activists, spirit-led artists, revolutionary mystics, and paradigm-shifting entrepreneurs who share a vision for a regenerative future. Who are you, and why are you here? These are the questions that ground our explorations into the mysteries of life on Earth and beyond.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh man, this is gonna be good.
This is gonna be really fun.
Welcome, Chiara,
Welcome.
to Terra Nova. Oh my god, we're so excited to sit and chat today. Do you want to go ahead by just introducing yourself, sharing your design, your astrology, whatever else feels appropriate to share or relevant to share?
Yeah, of course. Okay. Human design, astrology. I am a 3/5 emotional projector on the cross of planning. I'm also a quad right. And astrology wise, I am a Gemini sun, Aries rising, and Pisces moon.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I love Gemini suns. I love Geminis.
What's your sign?
Virgo.
Actually, not sure.
So I'm like,
You're Virgo.
yeah. So like my
That's
my
okay.
design body is like Gemini as well. So I love a Gemini. Anyway.
Oh my
sorry,
gosh.
I
I've had this conversation with an astrologer who's like also into human design, and she was saying like, are we actually more of our design sun than our personality sun? And also like if you think about like my personality sun's in an undefined center, how does that play into it? And then my Pisces design sun is in a defined center and is my authority. It's a 3740. So sometimes I feel like I'm more of a Pisces than a Gemini. I don't know. No, I definitely like really like identify with being a Gemini, but it's just interesting, like all these different
I
ways.
feel both from you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all, I guess it's all one big soup or something. I don't know. Okay, I got you off your so you're starting to tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, well, I don't yeah, so that's my astrology human design. I'm not really sure how else to like introduce myself. I always get like really overwhelmed with that question.
She's a writer and editor.
Okay, yes, I'm a writer and editor, claiming that, stepping into that.
Yes.
No, it's true. I write a lot, and that's what I spend a lot of my time doing. So I think I can claim that title.
Yeah.
Affirming that.
Yeah.
I love your writing. Go ahead.
I'm curious, like okay, so you're a writer and an editor, kind of stepping into that version of yourself. Where are these kind of paths crossing? Like, did you go to school for writing, find human design, astrology? Have you always been like, I know you've been talking like on your Substack about being mystical girly, me and Sarah like, yeah, we're the mystical girlies with you. So I'm curious to hear a little bit more about like the beginnings as far as like maybe where that began or like the seed of that passion to write and where it's kind of cross intersectioned with human design.
Yes, I love that question. I don't know. I think like from a very young age, like if I can like pinpoint it to like a memory, like I don't know, I remember being praised in like it was like second or third grade for like a short story that I wrote. And the teacher like read it out in front of the whole class. I think like something in that like sparked the seed within me. And I mean, I was always like a big journaler. And yeah, it's interesting. Like I felt pretty set from a young age that I wanted to study writing at university. And so, yeah, I ended up studying media and communications. It was like a combination of like journalism, and various other like media studies, but actually felt, I actually really struggled in university. I felt like, I don't know, it was like very strategic and like I always had to like unlearn a lot of the ideas I had about writing like after I graduated. And it's interesting, like I started my Instagram account a couple of years ago, and actually the intention to start that account was to practice writing again, like writing for myself. It wasn't
Mm,
necessarily to like become this like human design influencer or even like a human design account.
yeah.
My first like handle was actually a Gemini story, which everyone got confused about. They thought it was like age ministry or like I don't know. Like the way it was like typed out, I like never even realized like, oh yeah, people can't really read that. Yeah, and I feel recently just this like reconnection, like recommitment to that path and being like, wow, this is the thing I've always wanted to do. And like
Mhm.
a lot of my various interests I've had throughout my life, whether that's being like astrology or human design or um yeah, I guess there's been a lot of like self improvement type stuff, but whatever. But it feels like all of these interests have actually like I've got to explore them through the medium of writing, but like writing was actually the thing. And like maybe that's very Gemini, whatever, but it's like I actually get to explore these different things through writing and like understand myself. Um, but I just really enjoy the process of articulating my thoughts, which maybe being an undefined throat, I don't know, feels much easier for me through the written word than speaking.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Where and when did you first find out about human design? And what other spiritual escapades had you been into at that time that led you to that point?
Yeah. I I remember the first time I heard of human design. I was listening to a podcast on the way to work. I was working at this hardware store, which is very iconic in Australia. Um, yeah, I was listening to this podcast, and I think Jenna Zoe was on the podcast. It was either Jenna Zoe or Erin Claire Jones. It was in 2018. And yeah, that was the first time I had heard of human design. And I remember sitting in the car park before starting my shift and quickly entering in my details on Jovian and finding out I was a projector. And it's interesting that so many people are like, I felt this instant connection or like, whoa, like, uh, how do I describe that? That instant recognition of like this is something I want to go into. But for me,
Yeah.
I didn't feel much of anything. I kind of just looked at it and like didn't really understand what it was. But I think I've always been naturally curious about. I mean, I was into astrology before, and like any sort of personality typing system or thing, I was trying to understand myself really in any way that I could. So I think just that planted a seed where like every now and then I'd go and Google like projector. What does it mean to be a projector? What does it mean to be emotional? And in some respects, I think it was actually very healthy in the beginning because I wasn't like consumed by it. I honestly had read like no source material at all. Just reading random blogs. And yeah, I think it was really in 2019 that I started like it was just very slowly started to get more and more into it. And I remember just experimenting with like, okay, I'm gonna like sleep on things as an emotional person, or I'm gonna see like what an invitation is. Uh, but it felt more like curious and like I was still really into like manifestation at the time and still into astrology. So I think I was trying to like weave it into like all of these other things that I was still practicing. And then I think as time went on, human design became more of the central focus of my life. Um, yeah, which we can get into
Yeah.
later.
I mean, I'm like, I was peeking at your chart before we got on the call and like seeing this kind of concentration of energy, G center, heart, so I think it's G center, heart, solar plexus, root, right? Those are your definition. So like leaning definitely more on the sensing side, this like experiential um just experiential like way of being in the world, being with, a system or ideology or what have you. I really hear that like coming through as you're speaking. So I'm curious, like, yeah, you were starting to speak to it really right there, which is like where human design started kind of coming more forward. I'm curious, what was the process with that? And like, I mean, we talk about like source material. Where was kind of the divergence from that really like experiential, almost I want to say like intuitive weaving of the information versus like this more like source material adherence to the purity of human design? Where did you really see that diverge, and what were kind of like the influences that created that for you?
Yeah, I think that uh, divergence or yeah, I guess change in perception or whatever you want to call it really
Mm-hmm.
happened, I think the beginning of 2021. 2020, I took a human design course, and I was taking classes throughout the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And I really loved the person I was learning from who had this more balanced, like holistic approach to it. She also weaved in yoga and like other things. Like it wasn't just like human
Mm.
design, IHDS.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I found that actually really, like when I look back on it, it was really helpful and really practical, and a lot of things clicked for me. Um, but I think it was the beginning of 2021. I listened to a podcast. Um, I think many people actually, I feel like there was a collective ripple at this point,
Mm.
where a lot of people went deeper into source material.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I listened to a podcast in the beginning of that year. And it was someone who was talking about how, talking about pop HD and how most of it is kind of just spiritualized and wrong and um, is not true to like what human design is. And it really like shattered something in my brain, um, which at the time, I felt was a good thing. And maybe it was a good thing, like something, it opened up a new layer of human design for me I wasn't
Yeah.
aware of before.
Yeah.
Um, and then shortly after that, I kind of found like the mega folder, as many of us have. Um,
Good old mega
Fateful
file.
day.
yeah.
The end, the beginning of
Yeah,
the end.
the beginning of the end. Yeah. I
Oh.
love like explicitly like saying that because it's
The
just like,
mega file.
yeah, the mega file. Like if you know, you know.
Yeah.
And I before I got gifted that, I actually bought like the projector empowerment lectures. Um, yeah, I bought some stuff from Jovian, and actually, like I went back in my history, and the first time I bought stuff from Jovian or like Raw lectures was actually in 2019, like the beginning of 2019. So
Mm-hmm.
like I had taken in some stuff. It just wasn't um it wasn't my sole input of information yet. But yeah, then got gifted the mega file, was taking in more raw stuff and was listening exclusively to raw stuff. And as I was going deeper and deeper into source material, and then also finding myself in a space where other people were going really deep into source material and having similar realizations. Um, I think that's when my perspective sort of changed, and I was like, oh my God, everything I've been doing before this was seven centered or like was um and it really like changed my perspective on my life and a lot of the things I was into. Uh I don't know how to describe this. Yeah, it's just human design became my sole lens of like
It
everything going on in my life. Yeah.
it almost like you were talking about like this ripple, and it almost I would be so curious to go back and like look at the transits because I feel like I was observing the space around that time. Like I wasn't quite like even really sure what I was going to be talking about or what I wanted to talk about. I was still really like learning and figuring out this like whole reflector thing. I was like, there's zero information for me. So like I don't even know what I'm supposed to be saying. And like I do remember seeing like in the space, like very six line, like the ripple that you're speaking of, like people were really just like going deep. And it was like an interesting experience from an observer point of view because like the information, the carousels on Instagram were still not super informational, but it was like we know like there was like an awareness to the human design community that we know people are going deep and that we know people are knowing more and that we know like there's this ripple of awareness. I'd be so curious to just go back and like look at the transits and just see like was this like a final urge of like Pluto and Capricorn or like you know what like I'm just cuz there's no I feel like there's no real rhyme or reason to these things. We just know that they happen. And like that's not it wasn't incorrect even, you
Yeah.
know? So um yeah, I'm curious to hear more about your experience inside that, like what it did to your own process, your own experiment. Um, like, yeah, where did that take you?
Yeah, like being more into this like radical source material, like
Yeah,
yeah.
like down deep. And I'm like, I also feel like maybe for people who might be listening, like maybe we can even expand. I would be curious to hear your thoughts, Sarah, on this too. Like, what does that it might even be different for each of us. Like, what does going deep into source material look like?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Because, yeah, it would mean different things to different people. And
Mm-hmm.
again, this is only what I experienced, and
Right.
someone else might have a completely different experience. Yeah, so what did that mean to me? I think for me, it meant like exclusively listening to raw lectures.
Yeah.
Um, I do want to say, yeah, the correct way to consume human design, anything that deviates from source material or the language,
Yeah.
or it doesn't include strategy and authority, uh, I kind of saw as like, oh, this is not right. This is not, um,
Not
yeah,
correct.
not correct. I know it's
Yeah.
so like
Yeah.
over
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that word was really like the That was it was like you're either correct or you're not. That's it.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
like, shit, I got all 9 not self questions to ask myself daily. Like, what the I'm just all not self out here, like aggravating people because I'm just not correct. Anyway, Sarah,
Yeah.
like what I want to hear your thoughts on that too, Sarah.
Yeah, I want to say I kind of like entered, like my first entrance into human design was the definitive book, and so you could say I started with source material. And I think by the time I first heard about human design, December 2020, and so by the beginning of 2021, when this wave was happening, I think there was already this conversation around source material versus pop HD that was happening. Although I was still, I mean, and it's like, yeah, who decides like who's fucking pop HD and who's not?
We know who. No,
Yeah, I know. Like, are we gonna start really spilling the tea, or?
well, okay, here's the thing. I feel like this there's like a new ripple, right? Like we're all feeling a new ripple inside of human design right now. Like we see that now in the past, and we're all feeling this new wave of awareness that's coming on the scene. And I think a part of what I've seen in that is that people are like calling for accountability. And like in the past, that's like, oh, we don't like speak to these certain things. Like there was like codes of like the way we're supposed to speak about it. And now I'm just like, I love being in this space all of a sudden because it's like people are like, this person did me wrong. Like they're being messy. There's been like, I'm like, oh, I can't believe she said that. Or wow, I can't believe they said that. Or like, it's been that. That's the thing that like always comes like for me when contemplating this is like, it's all cyclical. It's all meant to be happening. Like even watching kind of I feel like people are really like it was very experiential. It was very much being in the experiment. Like we as human beings have this idea of how it's supposed to be going. And like so going deep into the source material, like going into this community that adheres to this like puritanical view of the system was what was needed at the time. And the people that were in Pop HD, they were doing what they needed at the time. And that's like, I feel like we get so addicted to it being this way or that way that it's like, it's never just differentiation playing out the way it's meant to be. And now I feel like that's really like the integration that's happening in the community is like, oh, I'm a messy human. Like, I say like I like the things that I say, and I also like I look back at some of my own human design posts. I'm like, that is the stupidest thing in the whole entire world. But but I'm like, but I was learning. Like I was, I was just having my process. I'm curious like what it was like kind of what was like the physical like I what is the word I want to say? Like what was the experience for you inside of that? Like what I mean, you we're going to loop around to this at some point in the conversation, but being an emotional authority inside of this kind of group, how did that feel for you?
Oh my gosh. You ask such good questions. It's so good. Because that's such an important point. Like, how did it feel? Like, how did it really feel during that time? And also, as you said, like not to even demonize it as like it was wrong, it was incorrect. And now like, yeah, it's like it's
Yeah.
all playing out as it should. And like you get I have learned so many things about myself and like, yeah, and valuable lessons during this period. And even there's a part of me that wants to be like, I'm like, now I'm like out of this period and like,
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like, that's still like, it's just really interesting to watch that within me. Like, oh, I'm cured. Like, well, no, like it was just a
Yeah.
process. Um,
Yeah.
but which will take time as an emotional being to really like digest. Uh, anyway, this is me waffling, but how I like when I look back, like especially on 2021, 2022, um, particularly those 2 years, like,
Mm-hmm.
and again, like I don't know if it was happening collectively or this is just my own experience, but
Right.
it felt really like heavy and like
Mm.
serious and just like this like ugh like I don't know yeah, this like really like this is just the way it is. I'm just, kind of my life's taking me where it's going to take me, but like not from, I don't know, from like in retrospect, from this like more disempowered place. And I could like, I don't know, I could really see within myself this like when I would interact with like family or like friends or people who were into human design but were into pop human design. Like I could totally see that sort of like moral superiority, like pedestal I was on of just like, oh, they don't really know what's going on. Like
Yeah.
I don't know, like I really see within me, like even using human design charms, this very like undefined ajna, like
Mm.
certainty that I was right. And also, like, when I look back on those 2 years in particular, like, if I read maybe like a post on Instagram of someone trying to call out some of these behaviors or like presenting like a different perspective, I would feel like defensive. I would feel that inner like
Mm.
triggeredness and like would talk about it with my friends who are also like in the same space as me and be like, this is why they're wrong, or like they're so stupid, ha ha ha. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, but like actually that trigger, like I think for me was really like, oh, there's something here I don't want to look at, but instead I'm going to
Mm.
um avoid it and say no, like kind of that cognitive dissonance. I felt like there was a lot of cognitive dissonance to me, and like as Sarah was saying, like I don't know, you just really don't realize like the mentality, like whether it's the cult mentality, like I don't know, when you're so submerged like in a certain space or community or like frame of seeing, like it's
Mm-hmm.
how do you pull yourself out of that? You either have to have someone else pull yourself out of that, which like for Sarah was John Martin, or like something has to rattle that enough that you go like, wait a minute, like yeah, it's like how do you see a belief when you don't know it's a belief? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
What rattled the cage for you? Like, what happened?
Yeah, well, I think like for me it was just like really slow.
Yeah.
I don't know, yeah, it's a really slow process. And I know there were people like during that time that were like calling out some of these behaviors like ages ago. Um yeah, it took me a long time to see for myself um some of the truth in that um little t truth. I refrain from using capital T truth now anymore.
Yeah. Right.
Um yeah, but yeah, I think it was little seeds planted. I think John Martin was a huge one for me.
Did you you
Um
did like you had sessions with him as well?
no, I
Or
regret
just
not
like
having, but I emailed him and
ah,
we talked on the phone for like 45 minutes one day, and yeah, kind of like does that thing where he kind of breaks your brain a little bit.
yeah.
Because I was trying to intellectually understand, like, wait, there's no such thing as strategy and authority. Or like, I forget exactly what I was trying to like grapple with, but I just like I don't know. I was, yeah, really was really breaking something. So I think that was a big moment, but it really for me was kind of like back and forth for a long time. Like
Yeah.
I had periods of almost outright rejecting it, and then I would kind of go back again. Um, and yeah, what was some other moments that like
It's like I'm hearing like a lot of like third line process too, like third line hot and
yeah
cold. Like it's just
yeah
like you just have to literally
uh,
be in it for so long. Like I always joke about being a 6'3". It's like I can like know a thing, but the only way I know to describe this, it's not a great way to describe it, but it's the only way I know is like my body is too dumb to like integrate. Like it's like I'm still like it's like it's really really slow. It's really just in the experience of like it's really just stuck in the experience. It can't like it like I can
yeah
see it, but I'm there until I'm not. So I don't know. Yeah. I'm there until I'm not, and
well
that's like that's it with the third line for me. And I mean unconscious body, so it's like, okay, come on. Like when are
yeah
we
you
going to
really
put
don't
this
know
in? Like when are we
yeah
just going to like let it sink in? So, yeah.
oh that's such a good point. Yeah, you're just like so in it and you can't really like
It's like
yeah you
it's in your it's like on your face. Like you can't really
yeah
even see it. Yeah.
yeah totally um yeah, I mean honestly like I think it's probably been like maybe like a 2 year process like altogether of like kind of yeah that third line of like in I'm out I'm in I'm out
Yeah.
fuck human design wait no it's so real like getting like yeah like
Yeah.
I got a reading the end of last year with a very prominent projector who was super radical in source material, and then I felt like I went back at super deep
Yeah.
into projectorhood again. Yeah, and honestly, it only feels like this year. I think August, I say, was a real like the summer was like a real breaking point for me. I had a session the beginning of this year with another human design practitioner who I really respect, and I was just crying for like the entire like 3 hours of like, is this deconditioning? Like, I don't know. I just like keep going. And she was like, I don't know. Like, maybe you just need to like let go of like human design for a bit. And it was kind of shocking because I expected her to be like, yeah, this is just deconditioning. This is just like, this is normal. But she was like, I don't know. Like, if this is what you're meant to be feeling. Just like maybe you just need to like go out there and be a third line and like just let it go.
Yeah.
And this was from someone who's been into human design for like 10 years.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that actually that was in February, and then pretty much all of this year there were different points um, that just opened me up more and more. And I would
Mm.
say now, like, I don't want to say like, oh, I'm fully out of it, but I
You're
feel this really
fixed.
big, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
fixed. Like now, yeah, like, I'm cured. Yeah,
Like as if
this is
there was
three,
something wrong. Yeah. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Which I don't know. Maybe it's the three. Yeah, like is that the 3 5? It's I found the solution. Like
Yeah.
really, like universalizing my experience, which is not
Yeah.
everyone's experience. But yeah, and then in August I went to visit my family in Seattle, and um, that also was a big moment for me. Like, felt like the first time I opened up to my mom in like a really long time since being so deep in source material. And I was just like, I'm so unhappy. Like,
Mm.
yeah, and like, oh my God, probably will start crying. But I think just this year I really came to terms with how unhappy I felt in my
Mm.
life. Um, and instead of being like, so I think for a long time I told myself it's going to get better. I remember like the end of 2022, I was feeling still this way. Like, and I was like, no, this is just deconditioning. It's going to get better. Um, and I think I finally like accepted and like actually maybe I'm waiting for something that's never going to arrive. Um, and yeah, just being more, just having to be honest with myself, like, does this serve me right now? Like, what is working experientially, like in my life? And maybe at some point it was serving me and helping me, but um, it wasn't anymore. At least the iteration I had, like that version of myself or frame of mind was not working anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like so much, and I'm just seeing this kind of like out there right now, this conversation around shame. And I feel like that's really kind of like the seed or like that. I don't know. I feel like that's like a part of the conversation to look at. Like anything that is prolonging our process with shame. Because I also have like a very, like, I feel like I have like a strong soapbox about shame. I think more people probably in the human design space who are puritanical in this way need to feel a little bit more shame. Like shame is not shame is
Yeah,
not
shame can be
shame
healthy.
shame is healthy to be able to reflect upon your own, like your own process, to see the way that it's interacting with the life around you, with like the people around you. That's not a bad thing. But when shame like stays on the scene in this like way that, oh, I'm deconditioning, this is a part of the process to feel like shit daily, that's the thing. Like, oh, I have to. And I think that's where like anything that is like puritanical in nature, that's where I think like wires get crossed, is when we keep like prescribing like, no, this is the way, this is the one way, instead of seeing
Yeah.
that our differentiation, literally like the blueprint that our body graph gives us, that's our way. That is, and that's the entire premise of human design. The entire premise. Sarah, do you want to add anything here?
I relate to like what you're saying, these like periods of time where we go through and we're like waiting for the day when it's like going to pay off. And I think for me at least, like the shame, I'd love to go into like a little bit of conversation around like shame and the not self. This is like something that Kodie spent a lot of time on through Not Self Productions.
That I
But
accidentally
for me,
deleted.
Really good.
I
Deleted.
deleted.
That's so third line.
what?
I deleted the entire thread. The RSS feed is gone.
What?
Like, I have all the episodes, but like, yeah, it's gone from the internet. Yeah. So anyway, but it was a thing that I did.
R.I.P.
Yeah, I guess my question for you is like, how, when you were in that period of feeling really unhappy, were you feeling like it was because you were like doing something wrong? I think because this is this foundational idea in the kind of like puritanical source material human design crowd, which is like the not self is bad, and if you are acting from the not self, there's a layer of shame underneath that, right? And so for me, every time that I've like caught myself in innocence transference, for example, there's been this like shame attached to that. And it's really only been this year where
Yeah.
I've realized like how much I've actually learned from my not self, like from being in transference, that has honestly shown me more about who I really am than even like the periods of time where I've felt more kind of in my desire. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to weave in here.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so true because it's like where do we go like to the school of life? Like through our not self, through our openness, through our wisdom. Like if we were just our definition, we wouldn't experience life. Like there is no life without openness. That's how, yeah, we grow, we learn, we like connect with others. Um, yeah, that's such a beautiful reflection. And the shame piece, I think personally, like for me, I'm in my like late 20s now. And I think for most of my 20s, I've dealt with a lot of shame, which I think really started in my in my teenage years. Um, and it's just interesting, I think, within human design. And I found human design at like 20, well, if it was 2018, I was 21, um, which is crazy. Uh, so maybe it does like intertwine with all this. I mean, with, everything else that's happened. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I almost felt, yeah, like, yeah, the shame of like not living my design perfectly, but also like I almost felt myself like during the years I was the most deep into like source material and not initiating and like all these things. I almost felt like the shame got bigger. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
almost was like swallowing me. And I don't know if it's because I like tried to ignore it. So it's almost like the shadow like was just getting like growing bigger and bigger. Um, I felt so ashamed like of not working for like 3 years and felt ashamed of like my way of living and like kind of felt ashamed of human design around like a lot of my close friends and family and like even like up until recently like it was even this year like whenever I'd have a conversation with someone I was so, and like they say with shame you're so like you're thinking so much about yourself like you're just not even like present like I'd be so like oh I don't want them to ask me this question I don't want them like how are they perceiving me
Yeah.
yeah yeah so I felt this like
Yeah.
kind of inward like and that's what shame makes you want to go like to hide like
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to look at people I don't want people to look at me.
It almost, and then it also like introduces this just echo chamber. Like it's not processing. Like there's no entry or exit. It's just like
Yeah.
circulating the system. And like I think about that a lot with the way that I was kind of taught to interact with my design or like the body graph is like this like mirror that bounces back and forth. And like there's an entire experience happening behind that mirror that is life. Like there's my loved ones, my friends, like there's this entire world happening and I'm stuck staring at this thing, contemplating who I am and if I'm in my desire transference. Like, yeah. Um the one thing that I was like thinking while I was listening to you talk that I wanted to say is like I think it's really I think it's really profound the way that you're speaking about this and like identifying that you were in like the core depths of that kind of community that you had these thoughts that you like were like, "Oh, well, cuz I feel like those of us who might not have been in there or like accepted into that group from I identify with somebody who like has big ideas about human design who wants to talk about them in their own way and this is like 45.3 shit. I'm like I'm always going to be excluded, so like that's a part of this, right? What I'm about to say, but I just always felt like I wasn't granted entry and not that I even tried, so there's that. But it's really powerful. It like almost actually makes me want to cry to hear somebody that was there inside of this kind of exclusive group that like got to happen who is seeing like what that was, accepting that part of their experience and then like sharing that. So I just wanted to reflect that because I think it's really beautiful and it's a gorgeous example of like coming to our like coming back to our design, coming back to our frequency, coming back to home and coming back to our own experiment and like owning it for ourselves. seeing that it's all a process, whether we're on the inside or we're on the outside. What if we were on this ripple, on this wave, on this cycle, whatever. Yeah. So thank you for sharing this, because it's really,
Oh, it's gonna be crying.
I think it's
Now I'm crying.
and I think that like the majority of people probably who maybe like saw that feel like outsiders to that, or and maybe like had desires to like, how do I be, we all want to belong. So thank you for sharing your experience, because it's like it's expanding me in a really powerful way.
Wow. Thank you so very much for sharing that, Kodie. That spoke to something like which I could feel like there was this in crowd. There was like this cool crowd and you were like in it or you
Mm-hmm.
weren't.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt special because I was somewhat swept into that in crowd. And I could see that, people on the outside, yeah, there was this like, I want to be included or like, and I've had people express that to me as well. Like, you know, they're like, I saw that you were on the inside and I wanted that too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it's just like a really interesting, yeah, experience and where it's like tribal dynamic and
Yeah.
what that would have felt, for different parties, from people that were observing from the outside and who weren't chosen in that like core.
And then also
Yeah.
like bringing light and humanity to what it was like, the pain that you experienced, like inside of it,
Yeah.
the validity of that. Like, I just, there's like so many, it's not just the outsiders, right? It's also like, it's about like the people that were in that. And like, I don't know, you sharing, yeah, it's, I don't think that I have like full like words to, but anyway, I've said enough words.
Same. Yeah.
Like, yeah, I think you're picking up what I'm putting down.
Yeah.
One thing that we were at the beginning before we started recording that I wanted to talk about, and I feel like this will loop in here at like somehow, which is like being a solar plexus authority. So and actually being here in this space with you, recording with you and Sarah, it's like I can feel like I feel it, and that sensitivity, that also that fifth line kind of body, that just like this very sensitive, experiential, tribal nature to you. It feels like very warm and like interconnected. And the I can't remember specifically what it was on one of your recent lives. It's what we connected over in our voice notes. You said something about maybe you'll remember what the sentiment was, but around solar plexus and emotional authority. What has that process been like? Like getting to know your emotional authority, like being experiential. Yeah, what there I want to bring, what was that you said in the live that we were talking about? Do you remember?
I'm like trying to remember like what was that piece? I know I
Yeah,
said something.
it was.
Like I literally like, what
It
did I
was it.
even bring it back?
Was
I
it
don't know.
something about like being in the experience versus like how many of your, like, it was like something about the wave.
Oh,
It was like the
okay.
experience of the wave. I would love to like go into that if you remember.
Okay. I think this was along the threads of like what I said, but I was I think what I was saying was like how many of my emotional like waves or like my clarity, my emotional authority said this was actually like just wasn't really my authority, like it was my mind.
Mm.
Or like it was something along that. And I know like what I
Yes.
said in like voice notes to your yeah, it was kind of, I don't know, the interconnection between like the mind and emotions.
The
And
Maybe I can weave this in because we spoke
yeah.
about this to Chiara, I think on one of our walks. Like how
in what ways have you felt victimized by your emotional wave? Maybe that's like one question. And then I know that you have a personality defined wave and a body defined wave. And my question is like, can you discern the difference between those two waves? Or I mean, I guess you can never really separate them, right? But yeah, maybe exploring a little bit more of those nuances to your wave, and particularly this whole victimization piece, because I think in one of our conversations we talked about how like in part of the source material crew is like, okay, you can like be stuck in a low like forever, but it's like, is your mind keeping you in that low because you like think that you're in a low, like
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's like so many layers, and I think some of them I'm still unpacking. So this is not
Yeah.
like final, like I figured it out. This is what my wave is like.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, like right now I'm like thinking about of being like sitting with um yeah, it's like when human design says like you're an emotional being, so like you're meant to go like up and down, and you never know what mood you're going to be in, and like it's just chemistry. So just separate your emotions from like whatever external circumstances are going on. Um, I don't know, like there have been so many times that I think I've like talked myself into a low, like as I probably said to Sarah, like yeah, prolonged that emotional low because I was like, I'm in a low, like just have to wait it out, just like I mean, there's still so many pieces that I feel like I like can't like articulate. 'Cause, like again, emotions, frequency, like it's not
Right.
even something you can like
Yeah.
articulate or put
Yeah,
words
there's no
to.
words. Yeah.
Yeah. And like
What
my emotion. Yeah.
Sorry, I wanted to say this. So one of the things in our voice notes that I thought was really like profound, or that like really kind of gave me like I don't know, it like pinged me or something. It like zapped me. Was you talked a lot about being I don't know about a lot, but like you talked about being a really joyful child, and like this kind of like super bubbly friendly nature about you, and like there was something interconnected with that like I really actually feel from a lot of the emotionals in my life. I'm like, these are like very up people, and yeah, like I the wave can get low, right? Like that's a very human experience, or like something I've like felt in relationship to emotionals. But like the way we talk about it in human design is so much more, it feels just more exaggerated. Like it
Yeah.
feels more like mind perpetuated. Like, yeah, like okay, I'm initiating a wave and from my brain. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'm a part of it that always like, it's cyclical. It's cyclical in nature, right? Just like the moon. Like the moon moves the tides. The moon is like creating the waves. Maybe not specifically here in the solar plexus, but using kind of that rhythmic kind of like cyclical nature. I feel like I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if that like brought anything forward. The Now I've kind of digressed and gone on a whole tangent, but the original thing that I wanted to say was like just that joyful, bubbly nature that you mentioned. Do you feel like that you relate, is that like personality? Is that like solar plexus emotional authority people? Like, I'm curious about just your opinions on that.
Yeah. Well, like I remember being in kindergarten, like I moved schools a lot when I was a kid, but my first like elementary school, and like my nickname was like Smiley. Like I don't know,
That's
the
cute.
principal, whatever, would always like call me, yeah, Smiley or whatever. Uh, and I do think there was this natural joyfulness. But then, I do think back, I'm like, oh yeah, I did throw a lot of tantrums. I'm just like thinking,
Yeah.
with the relationship with my mom, and my mom has an undefined solar plexus, and so I
Oh
think
yeah.
seeing, yeah, she would amplify that. Or, I'd be in a shitty mood and just like, you need to eat. And, would go to McDonald's and eat, and I would feel much better. Um, the fruit and soul plexus, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think with like the lures or these down emotional frequencies, like whether it's, anger or like sadness, I think in children it's just so quick. Like there's a much faster cycle. And
Mm,
maybe this was just my own experience, like cycling through those lures was not like months long lures. Like it,
Yeah.
could be just an afternoon or like a moment or I don't know, you think of like children, whether they're defined or not, like how quickly they're in touch with their emotions and just let it out pretty
yeah.
quickly, like before they've been conditioned to express that.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and like once they express that, like, they have their tantrum, they cry, like whatever, like kind of passes, and there's no like mental story with that. There's no like, oh, I'm in a low, like I'm gonna keep like listening to my depressing playlists, or um there's just that pure emotional energy. And like I think also in our voice nerds, like, which I've been thinking about a lot, is, spirit and emotions. And like, yeah, our emotions just really an expression of spirit, and that spirit's not really like, yeah, it's not like a mental thing. It's just like joy, yeah, joy for no reason, or like, but yeah, there's like some nuance that I'm still like can't quite like penetrate yet.
Yeah.
Um,
I
and
like
maybe I'll get to.
it's
Yeah,
so
like,
funny because I'm like this, like I'm like, we're
yeah,
about to
waiting for
touch
it.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I don't think it might not be this podcast, but yeah, there's something like to touch there that I think is so the part of like like I love contemplating that idea of like the spirit, and even just like the um our solar plexus being attached to the nervous system, so literally like the electricity in our body, like the nerves of our body, the way we're sensing like frequency. So spirit, we can think of it like in this very like mystical, and I think it is like our solar plexus does like bridge us to kind of the unseen realm, the more mystical realms. But I also feel like it is so much like rooted just in the electrical impulses and frequency of our body. And so, like, perhaps like a low can be like or a low, or just even like a wave cycle, whether you're up or you're down, is like lack of spirit or too much pent up, like maybe there's too much pent up energy, or maybe there's not enough, and it's like just this kind of signaling to the body of what is present. Like I think a lot about like the sensing circuitry as literally just the identification of like what is here now, what do I feel here and now.
Yeah.
um and yeah uh yeah there's yeah I
There's
love
something,
I
yeah,
love yeah
like,
yeah yeah
okay.
yeah
Um,
we all feel it.
something that you and I spoke about, Chiara, and has been like a big part of my last 6 months, where I've been crying pretty much every day. um,
We love it.
is like, and I think you were touching on it with your experience, your connection to children and how children express emotion. And really, like, what's kind of coming through now is the way that spirit communicates with us is through feeling. And so really what this wave is about is spirit trying to connect us to a feeling, because in that feeling there is a deeper truth that is
Oh,
wanting to be felt and revealed.
did you just do
Open
it?
solar plexus wisdom coming in hot.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait,
Did
I'm
you just
amplifying
do
something.
it?
And
You
so
did it.
I think the the sign of a true adept is being able to go like down into that low and be there long enough to feel that truth and not linger for a moment longer. So like this is just something that kind of keeps coming forward in my understanding and exploration of emotion. And the solar plexus is like when we linger in that low for longer than is necessary, that's when it becomes kind of like sadistic. And that's been my kind of take on how a lot of people are talking about the solar plexus and emotional authority in human design is like, oh, you could be in a low for months. And I'm like, to me, that tells me that you're avoiding something for months. Whereas if you just go into the thing and feel it fully, you're gonna come out of it. At least that's my perspective, right? I don't have a defined solar plexus, but I think the mind when now the mind has this language of, oh, I'm in an emotional low and who knows how long I'll be here, it's super easy for the mind to perpetuate that suffering. Whereas if we're able to go into the core of the suffering or it doesn't even necessarily have to be suffering, right? A low, when we're surrendered to the low, that can be some of the most beautiful experiences, right? Like we're touching into this like core soul deep knowing. And really, that's all the low is trying to get us to is like a deeper truth, right? That's the whole purpose of the solar plexus, right? To connect to that truth beyond words, beyond logic, beyond reason. And the spirit doesn't have another way to communicate beyond feeling. And so really it's like,
oh wow,
it's just trying to get us there to feel that thing. And that's why it's so hard to articulate, right? Because it's not meant to be articulated in words. It's meant to be felt.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
She just dropped the mic.
Yeah, she just, yeah.
Just picks up her tea and is like, okay, what else? What else do you want to know, guys?
Oh my gosh. No, okay, but like, I think what you just said, like access something, I mean, wanting to articulate, it's like when they say, oh, the lows are like for no reason, it's just chemistry. But no, like as you said, it's like to access the deeper truth. And it's like, I think these emotional lows are actually like, it is the information to access that deeper truth. It's not just for no reason. Like, it's not just like, oh, I'm just feeling low because I'm emotional and I'm feeling low. It's like, no, there's something there. And if you're consistently feeling low in that space, there is that truth that you're waiting to access. So like, oh man, it's just slipped my mind. But I know Kodie said something to me in our voice messages that I think it was something about like the chaos of emotionals, like really the chaos is like because there's no truth, like you haven't found that like truth yet, or you're not facing that truth, or like there's something there, like the chaos. I don't know if the chaos is actually what's like natural, or like what like is, let's say that it's not natural, but like yeah,
Well,
again, it's not.
that's the natural way that energy organizes, right? It's chaos to order.
Yeah,
And so it makes sense that at periods of time that emotional experience does feel like chaos, because it's almost like in that chaos, that's when this deeper truth can be revealed.
Yes. And I'm just thinking, I'm like, wow, like I honestly felt like in such a deep emotional turmoil and chaos these last like several years, like really being, yeah, not blaming it all on like radical source material, but like, yeah, I felt this just like inner, like, I couldn't, like, even though I wasn't working, I didn't have much going on with my life, there was this inner restlessness, or like this emotional, just like underneath like frequency of like just like this all the time. And again, like something I had to go through, but really like it might have just been pointing towards like there's something here, there's something like there's some truth that you're not seeing or like feeling yet or like really confronting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Wow.
Damn. Yeah.
Well, I feel like we could go on this topic forever, but like what are those, what truths are beginning to reveal themselves to you now that you're kind of moving out of that cycle of really like depression, like being in that low right for that long? Like I think we could call that depression. After being in that period of emotional chaos, like what truths are beginning to rise to the surface for you?
Yeah. Again, like complex layered truths that I'm saying, but I feel, yeah, I'm feeling like,
Yeah.
I guess, okay, I think like one of them is like, yeah, coming back to feeling like, I think when you feel like really like clear with yourself, or there's like the debris is kind of like not clouding or like all consuming anymore, like I think we all know like what, either like what we need to do or like um what is our truth, or like this reconnection to like who we are. I think we all know who we are, like, and again, like I think Sarah even posted about this recently, like it really is just like remembering. And I just feel specifically recently, like as some of the emotional chaos, like the waves feel like they're, I don't know, just like flattening out or like receding, where it's not like the chaotic like storm. Um, where I'm like, oh my God, like I already know. Like it's just so clear. Like I just feel this really deep knowing where like it really it really feels like a lot of things have just clicked for me. And again, at some point I'm going to be lost and confused again and it's going to be chaotic again. But like something within me like the last like 2 or 3 months just like, oh, like so I can see like the glass, my glasses have been like cleared. I'm like, oh, it's so obvious. Like it's just, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, like we talk a lot about like the confronting nature of the solar plexus, and it's like just confronting the truth time and time again, like getting comfortable
Yeah.
confronting the truth. Like, okay, this is the truth of my life. This is very clear. It's what's hard about it is it's so uncomfortable. Like that, and that's like true. That I feel like that's when we touch into like real deconditioning. I feel like the solar plexus is like in our modern age such a beautiful place to like engage with deconditioning, to say like, oh, I like I've known the truth for a long time. Like the wave is only just a part of like me not wanting to be like, I feel this way. I think this thing about that. I think, this is what I need for myself, or like owning our differentiated ways of moving in the world. And it's really confronting in our culture to become an individual. And it can feel like very lonely, and like it like activates those strings of attachment and like belongingness. I mean, it's so complex, like we're saying, like
Yeah.
it's so multifaceted. And that's what I'm constantly being brought back to, is like we're talking specifically about the solar plexus right now. However, it's connected to everything. Like it's a whole chart. It's all 9 centers. The whole like however we relate to the solar plexus. For me, it's gate 6. For Sarah, completely open. For you, your channel. Do you have 19 for? Wait, what? I'm forgetting what it was. What are your
I have
channels?
yeah, I have the 1949 and 3740.
Okay,
But
that's
I have a lot, I have almost every gate like I think you said at the beginning, if you look at my chart, it's like everything is concentrated at the solar plexus. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
yeah,
My eye just
really
went
all
like, oh,
happening.
yeah.
Yeah. I've got a completely different. There's like nothing happening on that splenic side. I'm like, what's going on? I have no idea what's going on over there.
Yeah.
But I'm just so feeling. Yeah. Yeah.
But I feel like you said it really well. You're like, even in our voice notes, you were like, like where we're open, that is like the wisdom. And so I would be so curious, probably what happened in this conversation, but to hear your wisdom on the spleen. Like, I really find that like where people are open, they can kind of break through in a way that like our definition kind of keeps us really locked into a cycle or not being able to see it. It's like being on the inside of something. I'm not going to see it when I'm on the inside of it, but when it's outside of me, I can see it more clearly. And so, yeah. Oh man, I love this whole conversation so much.
I have a
Me
thought
too.
that's just kind of come up based on this solar plexus conversation. So, if spirit speaks to us through the solar plexus, through feeling, my hypothesis then is the soul resides in the G center, the seat of the soul. And so
Mm.
I know you have that 5125. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about like what the G center feels like to you and how you connect with that inner compass to guide you through life.
Yeah. I've been thinking about this a lot recently, like even just this morning, really about how mystical the G center is. And yeah, I think there's like emotional spirit, and then there's also the G center. There's some spirit, there's something there that I feel. Like I don't know, yeah, if either of you also feel this, it's like just this tug. I feel like literally from my sternum, like this tug um, of when I'm
Mhm.
in alignment and when I'm not in alignment.
Absolutely.
Um, and like the G center, like it's love. Like, I was writing this in like my journal this morning, like who we like, what we love. It's like who we are. Like love is a frequency. Love is like it's so like cliche and like well, like I know people probably want to throw up like it's all love, whatever. But like right, like the G center is like about like what we resonate to, and like resonance is like love. Like what do I love? Like what it's this pull. Like I do feel like if we're talking about 5125, like just this like forward pull that I'm like being pulled into this new experience, pulled into this void, like pulled
Mhm.
um forward that I can't like. And I know like when something's like correct for me or right for me, it's like I get this, like I have to do this. And it feels like that very ego to G, like I have to go into this direction. I have to be pulled into this new way of being. Like
Mhm.
it's individual, it's mutative, it's like the willpower to fuel direction and love.
Mhm.
Um, and if I'm not following that sense of direction and love, I do feel disempowered. I do feel this sense of like not being alive or not being myself. If like the G center is about like being yourself, um, I'm not myself when I don't listen to that like pull. And that pull, that feeling, that like G center feeling is not, it's not mental at all. Like it really is like, as you were saying, the seat of the soul. Like I absolutely feel like the soul does live in here. Um, and regardless if you have an undefined G or a defined G, like there's something there. Like I don't know. Again, like coming back to like clearing the noise and debris, like when you really get like centered and clear with yourself, and 5125 centering circuit. Like that's what it is. It's like, yeah, it's just so clear. I just have that image of like straight, you know, there's something that's projecting out that feels so clear that you're being pulled towards that. Yeah, you can't really explain. Yeah, I mean, so
I
many
love that you
things, but
said I love that you said like being pulled into the void.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I recorded with Allison a few days ago, and she is a student of soul, and I asked her the question, what is soul and what is spirit? And she said, soul is down and in, which I feel like is into that void, into that dark place. Whereas spirit is more this like connection to the heavenly realms, to the light. And thinking about the initiatory quality of that 5125, like that, the initiation begins in the void.
Mm.
And the more that we, at least, my understanding of the G center is that it is technically a black hole. Like, it's the void. Like, it is the
non-atomic.
source, it's the origination point, right? It's like, it's where everything comes from.
It's
like,
where
what's
our
more mystical than that?
Yeah, like this is the thing that is, I mean, when like talking about source material, like this is how our reality is. Like it's our trajectory. It's everything that we're going to experience on this life path, and it's magnetizing us. It's magnetizing us towards that. Like we actually can't be separate. Like we're always just on our life path, and that's what I love about it so much. And so like the thing that always comes forward for me, and like considering the G center, is that there can be a refinement. It's like the frequency. It's like the radio signal from our body, and we can refine that. Like we can, we hear like no choice a lot in human design. But there is a choice to be in alignment with our purpose, to be in alignment with our path. Just like you're saying, like you can feel that as somebody who has like a defined channel to the G center. It's like it's very direct. You can feel it pull you. But like even for an undefined G, it's like there is always going to be that pull. Like the definition shows us what it might like look like, the context of it, the frequency of it, the expression of it. But it's like, yeah, that love that you were kind of talking about. I feel like that's like such a like I relate with that because I'm like, it's all love, I very much am that. And like I feel like for some people they're like, what? But everything that we love is being pulled towards us. Like it's this
Ooh.
yeah, this force that we can't deny in our life. Like we're not separate from it. So
and that's where the true no choice comes in, because we don't choose what we love. Like,
yes. Yeah.
yeah, we don't choose what we love. It comes
Yeah.
to us. It's like, oh, I don't know why I love this thing or this person. Like
Which then like presents this almost like this mental dilemma you can get in. Like, oh, I'm personally in a very confronting place in my life, and I'm like, oh, this is my life path. Like I chose to love this. It's like we can like look at some of the parts of our life that show up that we're being pulled towards as a part of our soul contract, is what I would call it, and being asked to love, and being asked to integrate, and being asked to see as an expression of love outside of us in this kind of like more universalized way that is very different from, like, me and Sarah were just talking about this yesterday, the difference between like ego love and G center love. Like the ego loves in exchange. The ego wants to like be in tribe and in community and love, and like share food and share warmth and share each other. Like we're exchanging something. It's like the basis of our mundane world of like planet Earth. But the G center is just it's the cosmic center of it all.
Well, it's like it feels like the G center is like the cool love that's like the universal love that's kind of like cold, but it's just like versus the tribal warmth love, that
Yeah.
exchange. Yeah. Actually, I have a question I'd love to ask you, Kodie. I mean, there's so many things I want to ask you about, like how just I don't know, I'm just really fascinated by your integration and perspective on like human design right now. But something I've like thought about the last like year or maybe like year and a half is like in terms of like authority, like whether like the entire chart is our authority. So like for me, even though I'm emotional authority, I'm also like single definition. And I've always thought, well, not always thought, but I've contemplated like, well, is also my G center and my ego part of my authority? Because I almost feel sometimes when I have the clarity, there's also this like ego, like I have to do this, or like I don't know. I relate sometimes to the ego projected authority
Yeah.
as well, like having the will to
Yeah, like that energy that's like consistent there for you. Yeah, I think authority has been a huge process for me. Like coming into human design, it's like the moon. What? Like, what the
Yeah.
fuck does that mean? What did you just say? The moon is my authority? And now I kind of get it. Like, it's the only, like, when you're completely undefined, your way of finding authority is through the outer external authority of reflection, of like feeling. So like really my authority, like yeah, my design is my entire authority. I have a sense of inner authority. Cognition is something, I feel like this is a conversation out there like right now it's been a conversation, but now like people are like, let's have this conversation, you know? Like, no, we're having this, like people right now feel like they're like, no, we're having this conversation. I don't care what source community says, like we're talking about cognition as like a context to authority. And so for me, yeah, the process became seeing this external, watching the moon, feeling it kind of like the activations, seeing that it was a lot about understanding that external reflection. It's hard to put into words, just like it's like that frequency thing. So I'm going to try my best here, but like that every gate, every piece of my design, every part of my body is a important piece to the the internal sense of authority for me. That my spleen, my ajna, my G center, like all of these things are working together, and my sense of authority is like very it's very nuanced, it's very multi-layered, multifaceted. It's who I am. And I think that like when we look at reflector mechanics, I think what I've seen in myself, and it's a hard thing to like even talk about because it sounds very like personalized, and it's for a reflector it's like very depersonalized. Reflectors show us a reflection of just humanity. And so like that truth that I found in myself, I feel like is something that I see when I'm in session with people across the board. So kind of looping back to what you were saying is like absolutely the authority is who you are. You are your authority. And I think that strategy and authority in context of human design, the way that we learned about it, was a really useful tool to see that like here's some consistent, really powerful places in the body you're going to always be able to relate to, and like to orient somebody towards making a decision from that place, I think is a great first step. but I don't think it's the whole story, like at all. I think it's the first step. So understanding authority, like our emotional authority, our sacral authority, whatever authority is, it's imperative. So again, source material, great. Yes, let's bring that in. And then let's expand beyond that when we feel like we need to explore ego authority. Okay, what are those people up to over there? Like, let me learn from this. What does that look like in my authority? And like layering it on. So that's like, I don't know. That's kind of like a long-winded way. I don't know if that like answered, but that's what I felt like saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's all of it. Yeah. One of the other things that was really profound for me in my own process, where I kind of went fuck human design, was I went back and saw that, okay, human design is based on these 4 different systems. So let me start studying the roots of these 4 different systems. So we have Kabbalah, we have the I Ching, we have astrology, and we have the Hindu Brahmin chakra system. I started with Kabbalah and was just immediately outraged because we're emanations of God. Like, we're emanations of love. Like, the first things first, we are pure source, being like, we are a pure expression of source in our differentiation in every single moment. And our definition, so like they talk about, so like our channels are what is called a yasher. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly as it relates to Kabbalah, but these were pathways towards God. So when we look at our channel, we see that our consistency, our definition is our pathway to God. It's not like, it's our expression of a path towards God. So like when I look out and I see definition, I can see very clearly an emanation and a pathway to God in its form. If that makes, I don't know if that's like making sense. Like, to me, it really differentiated the difference between like how we learn about it in human design and seeing it from a more mystical perspective. That like being in your definition is just like no choice. It's you are consistently showing us a pathway of an emanation of source in and of yourself in every single moment. You can't be separated from that. And then all of these undefined areas are ways where we have to kind of walk, like we have to kind of learn. It's like, oh, I don't have like a structured way of walking that path to God. So I'm going to like be inside of the emanation, or I'm going to be the amplification, right? Like I'm going to feel that in somebody else's differentiation alongside of them. So anyway, like you opened up a whole, that's like a whole, like
we are the source material.
we're
literally
material.
Yeah.
We are the source material.
Yeah. And
Whoa.
back to the one of the things that I want to loop to is like Ra talked about this in the Black Book, the very first thing. That was another thing that like really fired me up with human design, was that he acknowledged this at the beginning. We are all only here to channel and bring forth what we are. So like what we see in the human design system is an emanation of Ra, not just source. It is not just source. It is his emanation of God pouring through him, through his differentiation, through that lens of differentiation, which had 0 sensing circuitry. So we have a lack of spirit, right? When we're reading these words. And we feel that. It's very logical, it's very linear. And I think it's a wonderful way to learn systematically, for sure. But it's lacking spirit. And so that's experiential. That's where the experiment comes in. So Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking now.
Yeah, well,
I'm
we could go
gonna
on
just
this for
step
3
off of-
hours. Yeah,
I'm
we're
gonna
gonna.
step off of that soapbox.
Wow. That really just
Oh,
clicked for
goodness.
me, because this is like, so this is this piece that we've, like, at least for me, the thing that I keep coming back to is feeling like there are gaps in the foundation. And you even just like very simply articulating this piece of the Kabbalah was like, oh, that piece clicked in. My
Mhm.
understanding of my channels now.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really what we're seeking to do in Terra Nova through our individual bodies of work, through our co-created bodies of work, is like fill in the missing pieces of the foundation. This is a spiritual system. This is not a science. This is deeply mystical information.
Yeah.
And so, in order to engage with this spiritual, mystical information, these spiritual codes, we need to have a basic foundational understanding of spiritual law, of natural law. And that is not taught in source material now. Again, if you go back into the Black Book, there are pieces there, but as by and large the way that human design is being taught, these pieces are not being taught. And I think that there is a lot of danger and potential harm that can come with using this deeply mystical information in this purely logical, mechanical frame of mind. And I love that you just brought in the piece of that Ra had no sensing circuitry. That makes complete sense, right? Like how he translated it, that makes complete sense to me now. And we don't need to, shit on Ra for the way that he brought it through. Like he brought it through his vehicle. And
that's it.
And just something that, I feel like Richard Rudd with the gene keys is so complementary because it's so in the feeling, it's so in the sensing circuitry. I'd be curious to go look at his circuitry now. I know he's on the cross of consciousness. And that he brings that like felt, feminine, warmth, mystical element to the system that he felt was missing when he was working in human design. And that's ultimately, why he left to go create the gene keys, was that the way that this information was coming through his body, it wasn't computing with the way that Ra was articulating these things. So, wow, excited to dive deeper into all of this.
Have either of you listened to I actually haven't finished it, but like the 3-hour podcast with Rick Rubin and
Oh yeah, we
Richard
love that
Rudd.
podcast.
It was Richard Rudd. Yeah, right. Because he like what I remember, like when he was sharing the story of when he departed from human design and found a gene keys, like he went to Raw and like gave back the rights, and it was this very clean exchange. And it like again, I wasn't there. I don't know what happened, but it sounds like it was a pretty like mutual clean like break. There wasn't any like, oh my god, fuck Gene Key, like that's so stupid. Like I don't know. It almost seems like the human design community took that, but like from what I heard from Richard Rudd, it sounded like there was no animosity. Like
And to this day, Richard does not speak poorly of Ra at all. And I love and respect that about him. And the thing that really clicked for me in that podcast, I listened to it January of last year. I'm not sure if that's when it came out, but this is when I like Zen human design kind of came into my sphere, and I was starting like another layer of releasing my attachment to the system. And what really stood out to me in that podcast was that the language was what Richard was not resonating with Richard. And I think this is something that I've felt as well. Like I've, all of the keynotes and the Ravi Chang and all of that, like it was pretty easy for me to kind of memorize, because it's like I didn't even memorize it. It just kind of dropped in. But in readings, I would be like kind of parroting these keynotes, and I'm like, this is not how I see this gate at all. And so I started kind of like distancing myself from using the Ravi Chang, moving more in the direction of using the gene keys as a language to explore the gates specifically. But I think that's this other piece that we're wanting to weave through this podcast and everything that we're doing in Terra Nova is like empowering people to cultivate and articulate their own language of how they feel these frequencies, right? We all experience all 64 gates in a unique way. And if we can all feel empowered to articulate, or at least, and sometimes these things aren't able to be articulated, right? Because it's so beyond beyond words. But like, I would love to create space for people's truly differentiated expression of these frequencies. That to me is like super exciting. That to me is like what differentiation is all about. Not like you have these 9 centers and so we're going to use the same keynotes for every single person when we're, describing these things. Every single person is going to experience every gate, every center, every channel in a unique way. And if we're able to bring that forward, like that's just so rich, right? That's so rich. That's so just feels like soul nourishing. That's the nourishment that I think we can receive when we're exchanging really just like our differentiated frequency and who we are. Sorry.
Casually walks off the soapbox.
Yeah. It's just awkward. It's like, okay, the throat's on, the throat's off.
Yeah, no, like I feel like I have to like smack myself off a soapbox, and you just like casually like do. You just like sit here like,
okay.
Well, I'm learning to just like stop
Oh.
because like those two unconscious throat channels I could go for hours. But I'm learning like, okay, we've said enough. That's it.
Yeah. I never got into like penta dynamics. I was like, that's stupid. I can't contemplate 5 people. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's been also really empowering for me. I mean, I know I spoke mostly about my journey, but then to hear like both of your journeys as well, like throughout the last few years, and also like what you said a while back about like the collective. Like there's something about the collective where like we go through similar things at similar times, and like it's channeled differently because like we're all unique. But it's just interesting that who knows whether it's transit related or like what's being orchestrated, but I really see as well, like not from it'd be very different as a reflector, but just like witnessing these collective like trends, which I know like trend sounds like shallow, but just like ripples in consciousness, and how you can either go with that, and like what I see is that the people who stay stuck in one who like don't move with the collective consciousness, and I guess it's an interesting conversation in terms of like differentiation, like all that stuff. But to me, I'm like the people who don't move along that like collective stream like really get stuck and kind of left behind. And you kind of like get on that wave or not. I don't know. I don't know if this is like true, like heretical, like far out to say, but I guess that's something I kind of contemplate. And I just really see, as you are also reflecting back to me, like there's some sort of mutation happening within this fractal of human design, and it feels good to be in this space again after what it feels like so many people expressed like, I don't want to be here, I hate this space, this space feels icky, this space feels gross. And now like there seems to be some sort of renaissance coming on where people like actually like, I don't know, just opening up to new ways of integrating the knowledge and sharing actually like unique and differentiated ways of experiencing that design and experiencing life. And it is like really exciting to see.
I want to make one little, I know we're like trying to close out here, but one little note in there was I saw like mass, like I was pretty well connected in the reflector community when this kind of like in the depths of this like source defined, I don't know what we even want to call it, but like when that was really like connected, like when that group of people was really prominent in kind of like the human design community psyche. I feel like it was like our community psyche or something. The Reflectors like mass exodus. Like it was like, yeah, no thank you. And like I was like watching it like 6-line reflector, like, hello. That's like saying something, like canary in the coal mine, like. And like I think at the 2022
Yep.
conference, there was a reflector there who had like, this experience of like saying something and being like told to quiet down, and like that's when it kind of really all unraveled. And not self-reflector, and like all of this stuff. And it's cool to just kind of see. I wonder if I feel like I'm already seeing the reflectors come back kind of onto the scene. I've always been kind of like in a holding pattern, like watching the space. And I'm just seeing people kind of come back into community. And it's been really, really quite beautiful.
Yeah, I was thinking of that earlier when we were speaking about the wave, and kind of it feels like that HDHD 2022 was like the peak, and then this like the break, like the break
fall
of the wave,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then everything has been kind of like falling apart. And as you were speaking to, Chiara, like those who are not now paddling to catch the next wave and are still attached to that old wave where they were finding success, I don't know how they're going to fare, because that's what all of this human design thing is about, right? Evolve or die. Like 41.4 is like, like we have to learn how to adapt to the energy that is present in the moment in order to survive and thrive in this rapidly changing world. And if we're attached to, the status that we accumulated or cultivated in a previous timeline and are trying to bring that into the now, it's like that's already gone. That wave is dead. Like you need to surrender to a death and rebirth in order to adapt and evolve to then see who you're being asked to become in this moment in time. So that's where I'll leave it.
The metaphor I see there is like we're all on the wave, like you're like you have no choice. Do you want to get like crashed upon the cliffside, or do you want to like surf and have some fun? Like what, like are you gonna like move with it and be like surfing USA, or are you gonna just get tossed to and fro? Like that's the metaphor that always comes to my mind with that. But Mystical Heretic, where can we find you? What are you up to? What can we expect from you? I want to see more heretics.
Where are the heretics at?
Where are the heretics?
Oh man. I'm so excited for 2025.
It's gonna be fun.
I don't know what's coming, but I know something's coming. I feel
so
something's
exciting.
coming.
Yeah.
So right now you can find me on Instagram at Mystical Heretic, Substack Mystical Heretic, and I also have a website, mystical heretic. At least it's consistent.com.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah. And you can read a lot of my work there, and I've rarely ever archived a post, so you can see some of my changing thoughts in real time if you scroll back through the archives. Which I think is pretty cool, even though sometimes I'm like, cringe. But yeah.
No, I love that so much. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being yourself. And thank you for having this conversation, speaking to this. It really was like, it was a very profound, deeply emotional experience for me. I'll say that for myself. So thank you for sharing that with us today.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Terra Nova. Here at Terra Nova, we are in the business of community, and so we'd absolutely love to hear from you. You're invited to connect with us on Instagram at terranova.community. Please like and subscribe on YouTube so our voices can reach more hearts. To hear from other voices in the Terra Nova community, subscribe to our Substack, where we share writings from community members, as well as updates on our latest events, projects, and classes. This project is filmed and produced by Terra Nova Media. A special thank you to Iman Alchemy for creating this special piece of music for this podcast. Sending you love wherever you are. We'll see you next time inside Terra Nova.